But, you know, we have the same sort of phenomena right here. I've told you over the years of so many people who've claimed to be Aboriginal when their genealogical records suggest they don't have a single ancestor that's Aboriginal. Now, in each case, I might be wrong. Maybe one of their ancestors was an illegitimate child, but not one of the people I've named have come back with evidence and said, see, that's my Aboriginal ancestor. They just don't respond. And I'm talking about people including politicians like the Attorney General of South Australia, Kai Ma, who claimed to be Aboriginal, and Federal Labor MP Gordon Reid. But it's in academia especially, so it seems in my experience, academia where you particularly get people saying they're Aboriginal when the evidence I have suggests they're not. And again, they won't show me evidence that I'm wrong. There's Melbourne University's Professor Bruce Pascoe, you know that of course, and Kerry Doyle, an Associate Dean Professor at Western Sydney University, who claims to be the so-called Wininini tribe. And there was the late Professor Eric Wilmot I've discussed, and also the late author Madhuru Narogan, formerly known as Colin Johnson, who was Murdoch University's head of Aboriginal Studies, until it turned out that he had no Aboriginal ancestry either. And there have been, in fact, many more academics like that, claiming to be Aboriginal, many now exposed by professional genealogists on the website darkemuexposed.org. Superb site. Tonight, I'm going to name two more who've said they're Aboriginal, but could be mistaken since their publicly available records don't show any Aboriginal ancestors, as far as these genealogists and darkemuexposed.org can make out. One is Distinguished Professor Bronwyn Carlson. She's head of Department of Indigenous Studies at Macquarie University. And she's won government grants and prizes as an Aboriginal academic, even writing books about Aboriginal identity and saying she's Aboriginal through a great-grandmother on her mother's side. Which is weird, because genealogical records suggest that this great-grandmother's parents were actually of British or Irish descent. Now again, maybe there's a mistake, but when darkemuexposed.org showed Professor Carlson their findings, quite extensive, go to the website, and asked if she'd made a wrong assumption, they first got a threatening lawyer's letter, but no response to their actual questions. So they asked again, and this time no answer from her. I emailed my own questions to Professor Carlson a couple of times and also tried to call her, but again, no response. And it was very much the same story with yet another academic, my last example. Margot Neal also identifies as Aboriginal. She's an adjunct professor of the Australian National University and senior Indigenous curator at the National Museum of Australia. But once again, no Aboriginal ancestor in the genealogical records that we can find. So I wrote to her. The website wrote to her too. I asked, who is your original Aboriginal ancestor, right, from whom you base your claim to be Aboriginal yourself? Which ancestor had an inaccurate birth certificate, say, that didn't mention their Aboriginal ancestry? Now, the first time I asked, Neil replied, again with a hint of calling in the lawyers, and said, well, the genealogies you refer to are not the whole story. Aboriginal histories, as you know, can indeed be tricky, particularly if one relies on Western records during the long period of disruption and displacement. As you would also know, Aboriginal births, deaths and marriages were largely unrecorded outside missions and pastoral properties in early days at least, or inaccurately recorded. Fine, but obviously, as you can tell, it wasn't a direct answer to my question, so I asked again, which ancestor was it that you believe was Aboriginal, who didn't have their birth recorded properly? And this time I got no answer at all. Now, if you think I can't possibly be right, this many academics, ask some Aboriginal activists, how many dubious or outright fake Aborigines are there out there? Some have said as many as a third. And one reason for that, I think, is what Donald Trump put his finger on. It's sometimes more advantageous to present yourself as one race rather than another. Or sometimes it just feels so good, especially these days, not to be white.